Imagine this. You are a SWAT team commander in a quiet mountain town in Colorado. It is a sunny Friday afternoon. Suddenly, your radio screams with panic. You arrive at the scene, raise your high-powered AR-15 rifle, and pull the trigger. Once, twice, 100 times. Nothing happens. The bullets simply bounce off. Ping, ping, ping. You are shooting at a moving mountain. Before your eyes is a 50-ton yellow beast encased in a homemade shell of steel and concrete so thick that even point-blank grenade blasts leave only a scratch. It isn't speeding. It isn't hiding. It is moving at a slow, terrifying 5 miles per hour, crushing a police cruiser flat like a soda can. You watch in horror as this mechanical leviathan turns toward the town hall. It doesn't drive around the building. It drives through it. Walls crumble like wet paper. Support beams snap like toothpicks. The governor is on the phone. He is seriously considering authorizing an Apache attack helicopter to fire a Hellfire anti-tank missile right here on Main Street, USA. That is how desperate the situation is. But here is the twist that will break your brain. Inside this indestructible tank, there is no team of elite terrorists. There is no foreign military squad. There is just one man, a 52-year-old muffler repairman, a man who was pushed, prodded, and ignored by his neighbors for years until he decided to push back. He isn't here to kill people. He is here to kill the town itself. Welcome to the story of the Killdozer. How did one man build a war machine in secret right under the nose of the people he hated? And why did half the world end up cheering for him? Let's hit the rewind button. Let's go back 3 years before the tanks and the tear gas. To understand the monster, you have to meet the man. Marvin Heemeyer wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was you. He was your neighbor. He was a successful welder and owner of a muffler shop in the tiny town of Granby, Colorado. He was known as a hard-working guy who could fix anything. But Marvin had a problem, and its name was the Mountain Park Concrete Plant. The plant wanted to expand right next to Marvin's shop. It would block his access road, it would cover his business in dust, it would ruin him. So Marvin did what any civilized person would do. He fought back legally. He went to town hall meetings, he gathered petitions, he offered to swap land. And this is where the system failed him, spectacularly. The town council didn't just ignore him, they humiliated him. They approved the concrete plant, but then they twisted the knife. The city disconnected Marvin's sewage line during the construction, effectively cutting off his bathroom. Then, in a move of bureaucratic absurdity that would make Kafka laugh, the city fined Marvin $2,500 for not having a septic tank. They blocked him from connecting to the sewer, then fined him for not being connected to the sewer. Marvin tried everything. He sued the city, he lost. He appealed, he lost again. The local newspaper ran editorials calling him a sore loser. His girlfriend broke up with him, his father passed away. He was stripped of his dignity, his business, and his voice. The town of Granby thought they had crushed him. They thought he would just pack up his welding torch and leave. They were wrong. In 2002, Marvin finally sold his land to the concrete company. He was beaten, or so it seemed. He asked for 6 months to vacate the property. He told them he needed time to clear out his shed. He locked the doors, he covered the windows, and inside that shed, Marvin Heemeyer started being a welder. He picked up a Bible and he found a new purpose. He recorded his voice on a cassette tape, leaving a chilling message for the world. I was always willing to be reasonable until I had to be unreasonable. Sometimes reasonable men must do unreasonable things. The town went back to sleep thinking the Marvin problem was solved, but inside that dark shed, the sparks were already flying. You might be thinking, how does a single man build a weapon superior to the US military in a dusty shed without anyone noticing? It starts with a purchase. Marvin bought a Komatsu D355A bulldozer at an auction, a massive yellow earth mover designed to push dirt. But Marvin didn't want to push dirt. He wanted to push history. Think of this machine like a medieval knight, but instead of plate mail, it is wearing a bunker. Marvin invented a homemade composite armor recipe that was shockingly effective. It was a sandwich of destruction. He took half-inch thick sheets of tool steel, the kind used to make heavy machinery parts. Then he poured liquid concrete between them. Then another layer of steel. Steel, concrete, steel. This makeshift sandwich was over 1 foot thick. It covered the engine, it covered the tracks, it covered the cabin. It was heavier and tougher than the armor on an M1 Abrams battle tank. But here is where the genius turns into madness. Marvin knew that once the rampage started, they would aim for his eyes. So he installed video cameras on the outside connected to monitors on the inside. But cameras are fragile glass, right? Not for Marvin. He encased the cameras in 3-inch thick bulletproof plexiglass. He installed compressed air nozzles to blast away dust from the lenses. He essentially built a submarine to sail through a sea of debris. Inside the cabin, it was a cockpit of doom. He stocked it with water, food, and a revolver. He installed air conditioning because the heat from the engine and the concrete shell would be unbearable. He mounted gun ports for a .50 caliber rifle, a .308 semi-automatic, and a .22 rifle, positioned to fire in every direction. But the most terrifying detail isn't the guns or the armor. It is the door. There wasn't one. Marvin used a homemade crane inside the shed to lift the massive armored hull into the air. He drove the bulldozer underneath it. Then he lowered the shell onto the chassis. Once that shell was lowered, he was sealed inside. There was no hatch. There was no key. There was no way out. He had to weld the final pieces from the inside. Marvin Heemeyer didn't just build a tank. He built his own iron coffin. He knew with absolute mathematical certainty that once he turned that ignition key, he would never, ever step on grass again.
June 4th, 2004, 2:30 p.m. The sky over Granby is blue and clear. It begins not with a roar, but with a crash. The wall of Marvin's shed doesn't open, it explodes outward. The Killdozer emerges into the sunlight for the first time, a yellow demon covered in gray concrete scars. Its first target? The Mountain Park concrete plant, the very building that started this war. Within minutes, the factory is gone. Not damaged, gone. Marvin drives through the administration building like it is made of Lego bricks. He shreds the machinery. He topples the silos. The owner of the plant tries to stop him using a large earth scraper, ramming the Killdozer. It's like a fly trying to headbutt a rhinoceros. Marvin just pushes him aside and keeps moving. He turns toward the town. And this is where the situation becomes surreal. A parade of police cars forms behind him, lights flashing, sirens wailing. But they can't pull him over. They can't pit maneuver a 60-ton tank. Officer Trainer arrives. He empties his service pistol. Clang, clang. He reloads. He fires again. Nothing. The SWAT team arrives. They climb onto the moving monster. They find the exhaust pipe and drop a flashbang grenade down the stack, hoping to stun Marvin or choke the engine. Boom. The engine doesn't even stutter. The Killdozer just belches a puff of black smoke and keeps rolling. Marvin has a list. A literal hit list. He drives to the town hall. Crunch. The library wall collapses. He drives to the local newspaper office, the Sky High News, which had published editorials against him. He aligns the tracks and drives straight through the front door, bringing the entire building down behind him. He drives to the mayor's house. Thankfully, the mayor is not home. Marvin crushes his car instead. It is a slow-motion apocalypse. The machine moves at a crawling 5 miles per hour. People can literally walk beside it. They can run away from it easily. But the buildings can't run. The police are desperate. They bring in an industrial scraper to block the road. Marvin crushes it. They park a heavy dump truck in his path. Marvin pushes it like a toy. The governor calls the National Guard. They prepare an Apache helicopter with Hellfire missiles. They are moments away from turning an American town into a war zone, but they hesitate. A missile strike would destroy the town faster than Marvin is doing. For 2 hours, Marvin Heemeyer is the king of Granby. He is unstoppable. He is God in a yellow box.
Marvin had prepared for bullets. He had prepared for grenades. He had even prepared for fire. But he had forgotten one simple thing about construction in a small town: basements. It is 4 p.m. The machine is steaming. The radiator had actually been hit by a lucky police bullet earlier, leaking vital fluids, but the beast kept moving on sheer rage and torque. Marvin turns his sights on the Gamble's hardware store. He charges. The wall collapses, but as the Killdozer pushes forward to crush the merchandise, the ground suddenly vanishes beneath the right track. The heavy steel tread dips into a hidden basement foundation. Crunch. The machine tilts awkwardly. The underbelly scrapes against the concrete floor. Marvin revs the engine. The tracks spin violently, chewing up debris, screaming for grip. But there is no grip. The weight of the armor, his greatest strength, is now his anchor. The engine, already overheating, begins to suffocate. The hydraulic pressure drops. The monster shudders once, twice, and then silence. The Killdozer stops dead. Outside, the SWAT team freezes. Is this a trap? Is he reloading? They crouch behind their cars, waiting for the turret to spin. But the turret doesn't move. The blue smoke from the exhaust slowly drifts away in the mountain breeze. The police creep closer, step by step. They climb onto the roof of the machine. They bang on the hull. "Come out!" they scream. There is no answer. Inside that hot, dark steel box, Marvin Heemeyer realizes the ride is over. The temperature is rising. The air is running out. He looks at his monitors. He sees the world he destroyed. He sees the men trying to break in. He picks up his .357 Magnum revolver. He doesn't aim at the police. He knows they can't get in. He designed it that way. Outside, the officers hear a single muffled pop. It sounds distant, like a firecracker in a tin can. And then, nothing but the hissing of the dying radiator. It took the police 12 hours to get to him. They used explosives. Failed. They used diamond-tip sauce. Failed. They finally had to bring in an oxyacetylene cutting torch and cut through the armor layer by layer, inch by inch, just to confirm what they already knew. Marvin Heemeyer had sealed his fate the moment he lowered that shell. He didn't build a tank to win a war. He built a tomb to make a point.
So, what was the cost of one man's temper tantrum? 13 buildings destroyed, $7 million in damages. The town of Granby looked like it had been hit by a tornado made of iron. But look at the body count. 0. Apart from Marvin himself, not a single person died that day. No police officers, no civilians. This statistic created a legend. The internet fell in love with Marvin Heemeyer. They called him the last American hero. Songs were written about him. T-shirts were printed with his face. To millions of frustrated people working dead-end jobs, dealing with corrupt bosses and broken systems, Marvin wasn't a terrorist. He was a symbol. He was the guy who finally said no. But let's be real for a second. Let's look at the facts, not the memes. Marvin fired rifles at police officers. He tried to explode giant propane tanks near a residential area. He crushed occupied buildings, and people barely escaped in time. It wasn't just skill that saved lives, it was a miracle. If one bullet had hit a gas line, if one person had tripped while running, Marvin would be remembered as a mass murderer, not a folk hero. The town of Granby rebuilt. The concrete plant is still there, the library is back. Life went on. But the Killdozer itself, the authorities were so terrified of it becoming a shrine that they didn't just scrap it. They dismantled it, cut it into tiny pieces, mixed the scrap metal with other random trash, and sent it to different secret locations. They tried to erase it from history. They failed. Because the question Marvin asked inside that shed is still ringing in everyone's ears. It is a question that haunts every city council and every corrupt boss. How far can you push a reasonable man before he decides to build a tank in his garage? So, look at your neighbor, the quiet one, the one who smiles and fixes his car on Sundays, and ask yourself, is he building a deck or is he building a dozer?